few more moments. All right, Kyle, maybe begin whenever you'd like. All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 2023 meeting of the Executive Committee. My name is Kyle Bide, and I'm the chair of CB6. Tonight, we're joined by District Manager Jesus Perez and Secretary Steve O. This meeting is called to order at 6:41 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law now requires that all community board members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names on display from the time the meeting is called to order until the meeting is adjourned. Additionally, please remember that committee members attending virtually cannot count towards quorum. To the members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there is time following the committee discussion, we will field questions from the public. So the minutes tonight will be taken by CB6 Secretary Steve O, and we will now take attendance by roll call, and I will conduct the roll call. So committee members, when I call your name, please unmute yourselves, and when your name is called, please say present. I will announce that there is a quorum. Can I use your Thank you. Kyle Thide, present. Neil Barkley, present. Elvie Barosa,
Present.
Claire Brennan,
Present.
B. Dismant,
Present.
John Keller,
Present.
thank you. Sandy McKee,
Present.
present. Rich Mintz,
Present.
Steve O,
Present.
Matt Roberts,
Present.
Sandro Sherrod,
Present.
Mark Thompson,
Present.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven,
Present.
All right, with 12 members present, we do have a quorum. So the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. So members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. And there are no hands up online, right, Jesus? Nope. Okay. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the May 17th Executive Committee meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. So members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. Right, seeing no objections, the minutes from the May 17th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. Obviously, this is our first executive committee meeting in person in quite some time. So very similar to our full board meeting last week. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I will identify you so you can speak. For committee members who are unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. And to all committee members, it is extremely important that only one member speak at a time so that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. And then last but not least, the chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about any of the agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. The chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information such as an email address or link that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. All right, so I will deliver a chair's report. Very brief, there are just two main items that I want to bring up. The first is the Mount Sinai Beth Israel location. As many of us know, it is shutting down. This is like, I don't know, like the 10th time they've said that they're shutting down, but it seems to be for real this time. Obviously, because of financial sustainability, they've had tremendous losses in the last 10 years and are on track to, I believe, lose about 150 million this year as well. So this is something that I've been talking about with CB3 on as well. There are a lot of concerns again about losing beds, something that we spoke about 3 years ago, I think. And so this will be something that'll be on our radar, and I'll be able to talk to you about putting it on your committee's agenda, because you have to talk about the loss of beds and things like that. And then obviously Sandy will do as well with land use on that. So that's just something.
Do we put it back on our agenda for housing, since we were talking about it back the last time?
Sure, I'll touch base with all of you just to figure out how we want to move forward on it. We might do some work with CB3, might do a task force, something like that. So obviously we'll have a couple of people part of that as well. The second is a land use item. We just got word about the public health lab, which is right around the corner on 25th Street from the proposed Spark site. They want to build a new building there.
That's been going for like
Yeah.
5 years too.
So we just got a call the other day that they want to move forward with a ULURP on this. So I'll talk to you, Sandy and Vijay, about first of all, getting a presentation with leadership, and then bringing it to the committee as well for further discussion.
Is this replacing the existing Brookdale campus?
So this is not it's across the street, I think, from it on the corner.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the corner.
In that,
And what they have said so far, and yeah, Sandra's
Right,
pointing it on
right.
the
Is
map.
this it? I'm
Like
turning
right
around.
here is
Yeah,
the
it's like-
intersection of 25th.
Yeah, so.
So
it's-
there's a
it's-
new building
it's
here.
Right here, actually.
Oh, it's the 26th Street
Yeah,
building.
it's the old white building, it's public health lab.
yeah, it's the old,
Yeah, that it's in
crumbling
dire. Yep.
looking.
Yeah.
It's crumbling in worse.
And so what they've said is that they would like for that, the main tenant of that building would be NYU Grossman, so the medical school for NYU, which is obviously a huge deal, and then some commercial lab space as well. But we don't have too much information on it. They just reached out to us to have a meeting to introduce it, so.
Well, we proposed that as a housing site to the borough president, but I don't think we're gonna get it.
Yeah, I don't think so
That
now.
building.
Yeah,
Isn't that, I think that was like a city or.
it's like it's a city building. So they're moving that public health building up to Harlem. There's gonna be a new site up in Harlem, yeah. And so that will be transformed into NYU Grossman and commercial lab space.
Yeah, I was gonna say that,
Tentatively.
that kind of relocation plan always seems to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the other item, and I'll touch base with you, Sandy, and Alvi as well about that going forward. And then the last item, many of us experienced it today, we need to keep pushing on this virtual option for board meetings. For anyone who's interested, the UN General Assembly does not count as an emergency situation. Neither does rain or cold or snow or any of those other things. So we're going to see that for the next year because we only have the hybrid option. I had been speaking with some of our state legislators last year about a bill. Jesus and I actually contributed to a bill from one of our state legislators, and hopefully that will get reintroduced and taken up, because this does expire on June 30th, 2024. At that point, which everything goes back to what it was before. But as we've seen even from today, the flexibility of a virtual option, and just also all of the confusion that goes on with what qualifies to be excused or not excused, or do I count towards quorum or do I not count towards quorum, has been a burden not just on our board, but for a lot of other boards. We've already lost a couple of members just in these past couple of weeks due to the return to in-person mandate. So, a couple of years ago, and one of the reasons that, there was a lot of issues about board diversity and making sure that there were new members and members that reflected the community. This is something that we're already seeing is impacting that, because we actually lost a couple of news members. I don't know if I want to say on the record, but we've lost about 4 or 5.
Their names are no longer,
Yeah.
their names are no longer on our roster online.
Yeah,
But they resigned last week, citing the hardship of attending in-person meetings.
yeah, and potentially more as well because of people who are dealing with some other stuff. So it's just something for us to keep in mind, and something that we'll work on the Budget and Government Affairs Committee going forward. And that will conclude my report. And I'll turn it over to Jesus, CB6 District Manager.
Thank you, everyone. For the folks listening at home, can you hear me clearly enough? Good, thumbs up, that's good. All right, so that's a good segue. I was gonna use my report to maybe try and clear up a few things regarding the current meeting arrangements. Some of the questions that we get from the members actually can be very illustrative of sort of what confusions maybe people are having. We have gotten for a few of the meetings, questions like, is this in person or is this on Zoom? There is no more, this is on Zoom. because until the mayor or the governor issue an emergency order that we can reasonably use to argue that it prohibits us coming together in person. There is no more in Zoom. You should assume that the meetings are in person, because that's what the law now requires. There are a couple of avenues for attending a meeting on Zoom. And those are outlined in both the open meetings law and in the resolution that was updated just last week and is up on the resolution tracker on our website. I highly recommend everyone becoming super familiar with that, because it essentially tells you what we're allowed to do right now. A few things that people have been doing lately is asking questions about last minute, something has come up, can I be on Zoom? That doesn't exist. You got to keep in mind, the Zoom option is not automatic. If you have not alerted anyone that you're going to be on Zoom, you have not done it correctly. So we're probably going to have a little bit of growing pains while people get used to the way things are now. But if anybody has any questions, because it can be a little bit confusing, I'm happy to answer anything. You want to talk offline, I'm also happy to do that. But we're going to, as you all as committee chairs, we're going to need you to be sort of our guides with helping all the other members stick to what the open meetings law requires of them now.
I will just add to that as well, is that we were actually at risk of canceling this meeting because not enough people had RSVP'd in time to indicate whether they would be in person for this meeting. So this is not, again, this is what we have to abide by, but these are also the processes that go along with this as well. So, yeah, you had a question, Rich?
Do we as chairs need to keep records of the extraordinary circumstances on the basis of which we grant exceptions?
So when that RSVP list goes out from the board office, that will be indicated in that form. And if it's something that's temporary and they've indicated how temporary that is, or if it's something longer term, the board office will have that stored.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I had a couple last minute ones, which were legitimate. Do I need to tell anyone why I excused the people?
You need to tell the office that you excuse them,
Okay,
but you don't necessarily need to tell us why you don't want to.
I have my own records in case they're needed.
Yeah, and one of the other things too, because other boards have been doing this differently because this is very subjective.
Yeah.
Another issue with the state law is
Yeah.
that what counts as an exception differs from person to person, even on a board, and also from board to board as well. Some of the other chairs have taken the practice and have attended these meetings where they announce the reasons for people's exemptions. I am not taking that approach. I think that should be private. So I'm not sharing that with committees or, in any public setting, except through the communications that I have with that individual. So I would highly suggest to everyone else to adopt that policy as well. We're not required to tell anyone and or anything of that nature, and we're not supposed to pry. So that's the policy.
Got another one. I would like to, on the record, commend the district manager and staff for running an extremely smooth full board meeting in person. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I appeared a little stressed at the meeting. There's a lot to do. Kyle actually joined us for some of the prep, and we were there a few hours prepping and testing and making sure things worked and stuff. And I will say, I'll give kudos to the members. That was perhaps the most orderly discussion I've ever seen the board undertake. Wait your turn, abide by the time limit, speak once, and then sit down. That is how a community board debate should happen. That may be like one of the few times I've ever seen it out in the wild, so to speak. If that can be a model going forward, that would be very, very good.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to wrap up and again, thank Waterside for saving our butts. To go to the point of how great our staff is. Jesus and I have been working very, very closely on finding space. I know everyone has an opinion on space and everyone says, why not here? Why not there? There are a lot of things that go into it, as anyone, as a former chair definitely knows, into going to space. And it's definitely more difficult now post-pandemic, where we've literally just been told no. we don't want big groups of people gathering in our space, or we need a ton of money to pay for security, things of that nature. So again, special thanks to Waterside and to Janet in particular for giving us that space that ended up working really, really well. And then also want to commend everyone else. Again, like Jesus said, I got many texts and emails from our electeds after that meeting, and particularly on divisive subjects. We held a very professional meeting. Everyone followed directions. It's kind of ironic that in person it was more orderly than on Zoom, where there is no mute button. There is no thing like that, but everyone followed the rules. Everyone respected each other's space, and that was really, really wonderful to see. So appreciate all of you as well for playing ball with that. Can't do that without everyone's participation. And then the last thing I'll just say before we turn it over to committee meetings, I've spoken with many of you about this upcoming year. I know I still have some people to speak with in terms of the year ahead. But another thing that I'll put in is that we have somewhat of a scheduling change. There are a couple of committees that will be meeting every other month. I'll share this with the full board as well in October. To make things much more efficient, to make sure that our committees aren't being overextended for no reason, and that also that we are spending quality time when we do meet. So I know I spoke with some of you about that alternative change. So that will be going forward as well. All right, anything else to wrap up, Jesus?
No, just read that resume, please. Read it. It will answer a lot of questions. And remember the two ways you can be on Zoom. You can have an extraordinary circumstance in which you email the chair of the committee that you're attending, and the chair of the committee has to approve. It's not automatic. You can say whatever your extraordinary circumstance is, but that chair has to say, yes, this is okay by me. You may attend on Zoom, and you don't count for quorum. The other way is more recent. If you have a disability as defined by New York State executive law, there's a self-certification process that is automatic. You don't have to wait for the chair to okay that. Once we get the form that you self-certify that way, you're able to attend on Zoom. No questions asked.
And then just one other nuance, because I just remembered I got a couple questions about this, excused absences. So I've gotten a couple of questions about if my absence is excused, does that change the threshold for quorum? It does not. It's still just an absence. So that doesn't actually affect your ability to meet in person or not. It still means that they're absent. So that's another nuance in case anyone was wondering. Okay. Any questions from anyone online about open meetings law, virtual hybrid, any of that stuff? Yep,
This is
Claire.
Claire. Thank you. I was just wondering, like at borough board meeting or thinking in your conversations with other community boards, are all of the Manhattan boards like dealing with this and going back in person, or are some of them kind of hoping to fly under the radar and stay on Zoom?
Yeah, so this is if you remember, actually 3 years ago, so CB6 was actually the first public body to bring up the open meetings law. So we've become like the leaders on this issue. So I'll actually be speaking about it tomorrow at Borough Board because I've had individual conversations with each of the other community board chairs throughout Manhattan. We're going to figure out how we want to proceed going forward. We already put together a letter that was signed by all the other chairs a couple of years ago. We want to bring it up as like a resolution now. As a borough board resolution. So tomorrow will actually be the first meeting that we've had since this was this sort of thing was implemented. So we're actually all expected to meet in person tomorrow, even all the way up. CB12 chair has to show up. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be a big point of discussion tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning.
Where, at the borough president's office in Dickinson?
Yeah. So yeah, they have to commute all the way down there. So we'll see. Yeah, Cindy.
I know CB3 is just meeting in person, nothing else.
Hmm.
No other options.
The law is written in such a way that if the boards wanted to just go back to pre-pandemic days where there were no hybrid, no Zoom, no nothing, that is permissible, and some might even argue preferable for the state, but the boards get to make that decision for themselves. The one thing they cannot decide is they cannot decide to be all on Zoom right now anyway, without an executive order, emergency order, and still be in compliance with the law.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, I will move on to our committee agenda. So the first up is transportation.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
One thing we'll be discussing next month is we're gonna move, well, next month, we just had our meeting last night and head spinning because like it's in less, like a week and a half for our next meeting. And we're not gonna have a full board in between. We are working on a resolution, Gabe's working on it, is going to talk about asking the city to consider locating one of their hub facilities in our district, or one or more. And the hub thing is the thing that Eric Adams and Chuck Schumer proposed that is going to be like a charging and bathroom station for delivery workers. Manhattan Community Board 7 passed a oppositional resolution to a proposed siting at 72nd Broadway, and we are looking forward to writing a welcome report. The other thing that I think we're going to discuss as committee business is a city bike station at Waterside Plaza, but we're going to have to move a little bit on the side with this as well, because the thing that I heard from DOT today was that they talked to management. I don't know who the management is because there's probably 20 layers of management there. But DOT was planning to put a city bike dock there. City Bike was ready to put one there. And they had a site by First and FDR and 23rd. And then management said, thanks, but no thanks. And so supposedly it stopped there. And so we are going to involve some more people in the conversation. We're going to see what the temperature is. One of the things about having the full board meeting at Waterside was that even tenants of Waterside started asking, hey, can't we get here? Why can't we get here by city bike? But also at last night's meeting, we talked about the massive FDR and 23rd with the marina and the crowds for the charter cruises and the traffic coming up on the FDR there and all the construction and it's always been bad there, especially 23rd Street going eastbound at that point has always been backed up traffic at like Friday and Saturday nights and whatnot. But now the Uber drop-off situation is complicating things. And I can imagine that there is just so many problems there that maybe an initial site was not a good idea. However, we will be relentless. We'll figure out something. That's all I think I have officially.
I have a question.
You had mentioned the Waterside item, so that's not on yet, or is it? It's not on there because it wasn't.
The thing that yes, put the Waterside thing on there because of the emails we had today. The additional agenda item is that Jason's working on some research presentation and figuring out something to ask about official parking for the 13th precinct to alleviate some of the parking woes in that area. But some research will need to be done if it is actually possible to provide some sort of parking on the curb anywhere around there for off-duty vehicles of officers who are currently on duty. And that seems to be a little complicated. I think people want to see that solved, though. I think the main thing there is that angle parking on the side streets blocks sidewalks and has been a source of complaints for a lot of constituents. And the ability to solve that would be really great. But we do need the Waterside Plaza thing on there.
Is that language acceptable?
I believe so.
The numbering's all weird. I'll fix that.
Yeah, no worries. The only other thing that came up during last night's meeting was we were very curious about what the terms of the lease for the water club were at the moment, as to when it was last re-signed, when it extends to, and if there are any requirements in there, like there were in previous leases about whether they had to be open to the public or accessible. Apparently there was a roof deck on the water club that was supposed to be like a privately owned public space kind of deal, not under that specific program, but mandated to be open to the public. Now apparently that's out the window in practice because it's a private event space. So we don't have any policy decision on that, but we were just kind of curious And you may have to like,
I need to get back to you on that.
yeah, it might be a few months.
My hunch is that the last time I thought about this, the lease does not
Do we have it?
expire until next decade, but I need to look at it again.
Okay,
Sorry,
You go ahead.
we do have the leaves, and the last time this came up, it was, they came to Claire's committee and tried to renew their license, and we said one of the stipulations was it had to be open, and of course it's not. So. it's
Yeah, it
quite-
was also a proposed location for a casino. They wanted to do the water casino, and that was it last year?
Yeah, that's.
it was one of the.
Yeah,
things
but
that
no,
was
but
in the
that's,
newspaper.
they brought that up in 2022,
Yeah.
whatever it was. We said no to that as well, but that's the type of stuff they've been doing.
Maybe they could put the casino at 26th Street and First Avenue.
Brookdale Casino.
You probably know this is a long discussion we've been having.
Okay, I'll research this a little bit more offline, but that was just an aside from last night.
Mhm.
Go ahead with your other
Thank you.
committee report.
I have a question still for the first item. So has the committee already been discussing where some of these rest stations might be or the hubs might be? Because I noticed that there are several locations that I guess either because Seamless and Grubhub and Uber have coordinated them to kind of prep for all the restaurants. So like 29th Street, 3rd Avenue, or First Avenue and like 10th Street or something, there's always a bunch of guys just waiting around for orders. So it seems like there might be locations that are already being strategic locations, but already being stationed by some of the companies. I don't know if there's any coordination around that.
We're gonna discuss that as part of the resolution. A bunch of things about preferences came up. One thing was that they wanted to avoid it being in a residential area. They wanted to avoid it being cast far off from the side. And they had some preferences about what those facilities might look like in terms of, you know, it should have bathrooms, it should have fireproof charging and not just, you know,
Right.
weird plugins. And that's all doable. I mean, this is actually a simpler thing than a lot of people make it look, especially with like providing safe lockers that are metal contained and prevent any batteries from actually having a catch on explosion or the rest of them. So, but the thing that the vision, I think, is that it would be actually kind of along a corridor like 3rd Avenue in a commercial district,
By the restaurants.
accessible to restaurants, or at least within a 10-minute ride away from one of them.
Mhm.
And it would potentially use a long-term vacant retail space that needs a tenant.
And can you remind, because I know for the one on 72nd, but who operates these? It's not the city, right? It's supposedly, like, I think the one on 72nd was like Seamless.
There
propose
was,
that?
it
Like,
was going
they
to
wouldn't
be an agency of the city that was unnamed at the time of the announcement. So it is a little less put together than they make it sound. I think
So
there's some
wouldn't
grant
be,
money
yes,
flying around.
so it wouldn't
So
be a
We would ask them,
privately owned.
we would ask them to assign it to an agency as
Okay.
part of our ask.
So it'd be completely operated by an agency, not like,
Yeah, so would that mean
Operated.
that anybody could walk in then? I mean, this is
Um,
getting into committee stuff, but
it is getting.
yeah, so I'll just show up, yeah.
But we're happy to take ideas ahead of going to that.
I just have one more note about that, which is that I noticed that DOT has been willing to reconfigure streets to accommodate areas where delivery bikes are already congregating, as they did on
Mm.
West 21st between 6th and 5th Avenues by Chick-fil-A. They restriped to essentially acknowledge the reality that
Yeah.
there were a lot of people there, and that might be something to consider as a partial step toward this in areas where the infrastructure is.
Yeah, and we're thinking about that, and it also hasn't slipped notice that we had that 3rd Avenue redesign kind of thing for going on, so like that's a central part of the district. And if we happen to be looking around that area, that could be potentially something we tie in with it. I don't think the committee has any opposition of taking a little bit of curb space along the lines of what like a, you know, sidewalk shed does for a restaurant, and using that kind of facility, as long as it can do what it needs to do in terms of the restroom access and in terms of the power charging, you know. power
And
grid access.
I was just gonna say, Claire, this might be something that you want to like cross endorse, especially with like empty storefront perspective. Because we've been talking about that on the committee for a long time as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I also wonder if there are businesses that in our district that like would want one, and maybe we can kind of somehow do some outreach.
Okay, great. All right, so seeing no further questions, we'll move on to environment and parks. Neil, go ahead.
All right, good evening, everyone. As stated at the full board meeting, we are hoping to confirm a rep from sanitation, and we would discuss containerization for residential buildings. The commercial building containerization has rolled out, so we would discuss the residential building rollout. Of course, the budget discussion as that we have numerous items on there that we will talk about. We will discuss the agenda for the year. So individually, we've all had a chance to speak with each other, but now to come together at the meeting and talk about some of the ideas and things that we would like to address for the year. I would say events in the district also, as I had noted at full board, October the 21st at Stuyvesant Square will be, it's my park day, and I will ask everyone to attend, of course. I think it'll be a really nice event. The 22nd, also, there will be another event at the East Park, Stuyvesant Square Park, with the gardeners of Stuyvesant Square. So we got a lot going on in our first meeting. There is a possibility of a presentation about bioswales, and I have been speaking with Sandy with land use, and so we're very supportive of that because parks would be in charge of the maintenance, and it falls within the environment part of our committee. And so that really, that depends on, I would say, the sanitation rep, because we have a pretty packed agenda. But it's very interesting and we do support it. So it's something we'd like to.
And maybe I'll just follow up with that. As part of the ESCR project, we're supposed to be getting, I can't remember whether it's 40 or 60 bioswales. And so it was also something that our planning fellow mentioned would be really helpful in our district. So it's something we're going to continue to look at. But I believe it is parks who implements them. And unfortunately, it's community members who have to maintain them. So if we can find some good locations and some groups that will be interested in taking care of them.
Okay, any further questions for parks?
So the bioswales thing, not on the agenda yet, but you'll let me know. The DSNY rep, you don't have their name yet.
No, I've been speaking to one of the reps that we have there, Marissa.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to confirm someone from there. So it would not be her. It's someone else.
Okay. And this, you had mentioned something about members talking about.
So we got budget.
Here.
Yeah, so we have budget. Okay, so we have sanitation budget discussion. We will have the committee, we will discuss plans for the year, the agenda, things that we would like to bring up, because we've all spoken like individually.
Well, my question
So
is,
bring it
should that be
together.
up here, on here, or you gotta just bring it in?
So
as far as
put, yeah, I think it should be an agenda item, and
Yeah,
let's
you-
call it
you
like
can-
committee discussion
You
on
can, yeah. you can
2023 to
find it.
2024 priorities.
And I think realistically, because it's a pretty packed meeting, I don't know how long
Mhm.
that discussion will be. I don't want to keep people there for a couple hours.
I mean, you can kind of put it into the budget requests almost.
And or the chair's report, just, I don't think it would be too much, but we could put it on there and then.
It's up to you, I just wanna know, because we need to post these and they need to be accurate, so if you want it on there, great. If
No,
not,
no,
fine.
I can do it in the chair's report, that's fine, yeah, I don't want to scare anyone away from that agenda.
We'll post as is.
Thank you.
The only reason I would advocate for putting it as an agenda item is so that people know that it's going to be there, especially people from the public. So if they want to join and say, hey, I want to talk about X, Y, and Z, then you have that. But for each of these, you can also just put a time limit on them. So you can say, I want the
Yeah,
report to be 30 minutes.
Yeah, we could do. the
Request, budget
application.
requests will be 30
Yeah.
minutes, something like that.
Right, so I think with this though is, we already have members of the public who attend and we have the parks part. And so they can raise anything there. And I'm sure, positive that people from the different organizations will be calling and emailing me
Mhm.
about things they'd like to see on the agenda going forward. So I think we should be covered. I can guarantee I will hear from
Perfect.
I'll hear from everyone.
Okay,
So
we're
like
set.
this? Okay. Okay,
All right,
thank you.
next up, we'll skip budget and governmental affairs because we don't have anyone from that committee today. Health and Human Services, Alvi.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. We're not gonna have a meeting in October, but in lieu of that, we have the community board health fair, and I would like everyone to promote and support. So in our last meeting, we discussed about assignments. So far, we have 20 tables and we have 16 vendors on the list. 11 had been confirmed. And there are five more to be confirmed. So the services that are confirmed are flu shots from DOH, TB screening, tuberculosis screening, also from DOH. We have health insurance enrollment, also from DOH. We have HIV testing from DOH. We have community engagement from DOH. We have the dentistry from NYU. We have the emergency management. We have blood sugar screening from the Philippine Nurses Association of New York. And we have NYU table and CB6. So 11 have been confirmed. And we have 4 more tables, 4 more empty tables. So if any one of you have any suggestion or recommendation, please let me know. I need the contact person, I need the email, the phone number, and the services that will be provided. Yes.
So this meeting on the 5th, that's happening or what is?
That's just to follow up with the assignments.
Okay,
It's part of an open.
So currently, Brendan is polling the committee to make sure that they even are available this night, because it's not certain that they are. But keep in mind, as we've been told in the past by the previous Borough President Administration's General Counsel, if you amass enough members to get a quorum, this needs to be like a meeting like this. So,
so I would suggest that this is just logistics, just do this by email.
This is like a working.
Yeah, this is
They're
not, yeah.
passing a policy. They don't need.
we've tried that before.
No,
but,
so-
the Borough President got involved. and
So
said,
what, yeah, so
like this.
in terms, I think we're talking about two things here. So if we do convene, we were told by the Borough President's office, if we ever talk about any sort of business,
Yeah,
it has to be a public meeting.
right.
But if this is just a meeting that you're doing to do logistics, I would just do this by email.
I just
I wouldn't
want to
even-
follow up that
yeah.
assignment.
I don't even know why this is listed here though.
Well, she asked us to put it.
Oh, yeah. So I would just,
Because
I would
I
just,
didn't know if we have to hold,
no, no, so
I
this
can
is, yeah, this is, what you're talking about is just a logistics
This
thing.
is just administrative business.
I
It's
just
just
want to
administrative.
follow up with
Yeah.
the assignment.
We were
Yeah.
told that if you amass a quorum.
Oh, there's not a form. They're not voting on anything.
No, but if you just amass people, there's the quorum.
So if we are all run into each other on a
Yes,
corner.
I asked
that's
the exact
that's
question.
ridiculous.
That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I asked that exact question.
We wanted to organize trainings.
Okay, so we should never do a
Hold any.
street fair.
No,
I
we're
think
not,
that they
it's
say
not that,
that
it's that, it's
because-
about
I mean,
gathering together.
Look,
So
if they decide.
I agree
if
with
they
your point,
decide
but that's
not
what they
to,
told us. So
What'll have to happen is someone will have to find out about it, someone will have
I,
to.
that's what I
sue
said. So we all went to the
And
same
file an
bar
Article 78.
and
things like
happened to
that.
like hang out.
I'm just,
That was-
I'm telling you the way, what we've been explained is the way to do it. Whether you guys do it or not is.
But can I email them to follow up with assignments?
Yes,
Sure.
yeah,
Okay,
so
so
just
I'm just
do
gonna
this
put that.
by email. Yes,
You may maybe telephone call these people. I mean, are they all gonna be there? Are they all involved or, you know?
Well, each one has an assignment that I need
Yeah,
to follow.
because the meeting is technically the fair.
Yes.
That's the public thing. So this is just prepping for that. So it'd be like coordinating with Jesus to set up, an actual
Okay.
meeting. So just, do that offline.
All right.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a listed meeting because it's not a meeting.
All right.
How many of these are gonna be emails instead of meetings?
Yeah.
So we're not gonna have a meeting in October.
Mhm.
So our next meeting is in November. And also we plan not to meet in
Yeah.
December.
But that's public. It's,
Was that the current,
yeah,
borough president came up with that idea?
the general counsel, but the general counsel.
The general counsel spoke to us about these matters and said things like, if you amass a quorum somewhere, then you have to make it a public meeting. And
Sorry, no, I think this seems like. So this seems like someone clearly was trying to protect against an end run around the open meetings law, right? So if, for example, we wanted to discuss something. And we just didn't calendar it because we went to a bar or we went to a restaurant or the park, then you can say, well, it wasn't a calendared meeting. But the point of the open meetings law is to ensure that business is discussed in a public forum, not that we figure out who's going to bring the supplies for an event. So that's, I think this is kind of like
that nuance was explained to them.
I think this is like an overly cautious attorney.
Yeah.
Perhaps, but the way I see it is that when they talk about quorum, they're talking about a very specific body. So it would have to be 25 plus one of the full board, or it would have to be the quorum of the specific committee.
Right.
So members of different committees having to be in the same place would never run afoul of that. And I do think it's kind of fishy if you actually had a majority of any one committee running into each other on the street and
So
spending
that's-
more than
yeah.
1 minute together.
So that's what they said.
So-
But we don't need to delve into this now.
I
Yeah.
know, but so that means that, like, if, for example, when we do a tour with DOT to go look at street conditions, and we have a majority of a committee because that's who is going to do the tour, it's now like a calendared meeting. That doesn't make any logical sense. I think this is like taken a little too far. But it's okay.
No,
It's not gonna prevent us from doing anything.
Yeah.
Because we're not trying to do anything.
And in those situations,
Yeah.
that isn't we're not hosting
Right.
that, so that's not.
But
our
it doesn't
purview
matter.
anyway.
Because
Yeah,
we might
so-
have quorum.
yeah, so they,
So-
if for example, if parks or whatever.
Yeah.
Or transportation takes us on a tour of the East Midtown Greenway, stuff.
Exactly.
It's not our meeting.
Well, we can.
So
prove
if
that
they
It should be
assembled.
though, is what I'm hearing, because there might be.
No, because,
no.
no. So the issue would be like, if we decided to do that. And say, we're going to tour this together as a group and
Oh.
discuss business, then we would have to make that public, but because Parks is doing it. And we go there, that's a Parks, like, if they want to follow it, that's between them. And, COIB or whoever it ends up being, yeah.
I would,
So for something like this, that's why I'm saying take this off, because I
Yeah.
agree, this
Yeah,
is
it's
a complete logistics thing, this doesn't need to be.
I'll
Listen, yeah.
review all of these, see if they fall under.
Well, because we're talking about business of these, this is just the logistics to prep for the actual public event, which is the forum. So, hey, you're gonna be greeting.
Yeah, but based
You're
on
gonna-
what we're discussing now, every committee will almost reevaluate it. Required.
No, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because this is actual like policy that's being discussed for these other
Yeah.
meetings, so
and
that
to
is
be
why,
fair, I
yeah.
have never seen a forum of a committee or the full board out in the wild. Ever. It doesn't.
So, yeah.
We don't loop you in.
All right, let's move on. So we'll go to housing and homelessness, Rich.
Thank you. So we just met this week. I've been in this office twice at rush hour during the General Assembly.
God bless you.
Yeah.
And your committee.
We had a substantive conversation on two issues. One was the right to counsel in housing court. We had a speaker. And the other was the right to shelter and the housing implications of the large number of migrant arrivals. We're going to keep tabs on both of those issues, and we will be discussing a resolution on each of them at our next meeting in October, which Abby will be sharing because I won't be here. The other thing we talked about at this meeting was briefly budget requests, which we are going to have to nail down offline because we're not going to meet again in time. But we have a process for that we used last year, which Nad, who's on both committees, is comfortable with. So that we should be able to resolve. The other issue that we are actively watching is resources for migrant students in schools in collaboration with John's community. I don't really have anything to say about long-term priorities because Abby and I haven't talked about it yet, but we are watching those two things, and we'll be bringing two resolutions forward. Let me see what you try.
We didn't get any.
Yeah, the language is, it's the same thing, it's discussion, one is discussion of resolution regarding right to cancel.
Clean this up.
Yeah. And the other one is discussion of resolution regarding the right to cancel.
Right. Yeah, so these are both resolutions,
They will be brought into the meeting, you
discussion.
will have them in advance.
3 days in advance.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
okay, all right, I'll clean this.
At
up.
least 3.
We got 4 weeks, I think
Yeah.
we can do it.
It sneaks up on you.
Yes.
Trust me. Trust.
You have a question?
Well, just
Sandy?
the Port Hotel, has that come up in there?
I don't know. What
Isn't
is
it,
that?
isn't it, it's being made a shelter for,
Where is it?
it's 30, isn't it 39th and Lex?
Is it being made a family shelter?
Yeah,
Like the
That's
one across
that's,
from me?
that's that new shelter that we met with the operators.
Oh,
Yeah, the new one.
The
like,
one that-
they're rebuilding.
the one that used to be the W Hotel?
It wasn't, it's not the W.
Oh, it's
Lexington,
different.
Lexington.
Yeah, it's on 39th and Lex. It's the one we met.
it's right on the corner,
It's the one we met, yeah, we met with them.
because I think it's open now. That's what
I don't know.
Oh, is it? I thought they were rebuilding that whole thing, like,
No, well, I
they
mean,
have to retrofit, yeah.
well, there was a guard sitting at the front door. It just said someone who lives in the neighborhood asked me about it, and they said it was sent to CD6 in the summer.
It was the hotel that we met with, or.
Yeah,
we
it's the
operated-
same one that used to be the W Hotel. We're thinking.
Is it the W? Was
So
it
it used to be a W, then it turned to the Lexington.
Oh, okay, okay.
Then it's.
The
okay.
Port.
I don't remember when it was
They
W.
paid $50
It
million.
was, that's like 8 years ago or
It was the original W Hotel.
Original.
Hmm.
Yeah, the one we met with,
Yeah,
where they
so
were showing.
so
us-
we think that's open.
I'm surprised, because they were talking about they had to like put kitchens in each room, they had to like retrofit everything, so I didn't know that was
Oh,
gonna,
that's-
yeah, open so fast, but.
I don't know, there was a guard sitting around the door.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
It used to be,
Yeah, so Jesus, can we follow up with DSS? See if that actually randomly opened?
yeah, I mean, I could be wrong, could be.
You know, yeah, I mean, maybe,
I-
but,
I was focused
oh,
on
yeah, yeah. It's the 39th and Lex shelter that we talked about last year. We met with the operators, they got the city grant. It was like tens of millions of dollars to retrofit.
Whether.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was another concern, which could also be, should be something for like the year long, which is like auditing
cost.
these operators, like,
Yeah.
and what the hell they're actually doing.
Yeah, someone.
Yeah, because this was the
Should've been
operator,
covered,
one of the individuals who's operating it used to work for the city.
One
Like
thirty.
two-
I mean, that would make sense
That's
to
what-
match it.
130.
I gotta look that up.
Yeah.
It was called the Court Hotel.
Yeah.
It's this 39th Street Lexington will house 200, it's a story from
It
Cranes.
was a family shelter.
Yeah, it's family.
Yeah. Yeah, 130 is 39, same building.
Okay, I'll,
Be shocked if they, like, kudos to their construction team if they did that.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
And just as an update, I live across the street from the Marcel, which is a family shelter. Perfectly good neighbors. They take better care of the space outside than my.
Well, I mean, with this one, we talked about security, so I'm
Yeah.
at least happy that there's a guard there,
Yeah.
so.
We'll see. In terms of construction, what about the women's shelter in 40?
That's gonna be a long process because they have to demolish and rebuild.
Yeah.
Oh, it is a
Yeah, that's a
That's a
demolish.
completely.
Yeah.
they've begun moving the residents of that shelter out.
Yeah.
And I did ask when more active activities will be happening. I still haven't gotten a response, so we'll keep on that.
Mhm.
I don't think I have anything else to.
Actually, I have something I forgot to mention during Toby's report. So we had a rather unorthodox thing come up. We just got a call from a dialysis center in the district that is closing. They say that in order to sort of officially wind down, they need to sort of report file their closing with the state health department. 90 days before they intend to close. They say that their lease runs out at the end of this year. They also say that before they can officially file their closing process with the state, they need to have a public meeting at which they sort of announce that they're closing and I guess give the public a chance to offer input. We have never had anything like this come to us, so I called the state health department to sort of verify a few of these things this afternoon. They are going to sort of check in and see what actually our responsibility is and what it is not, and they'll get back to me in the next day or two. Now, the sticking point is that if they need to advise if they need to file with the state that they're closing 90 days in advance, they claim that their lease runs out at the end of the year. That means they need to do this with the state on October 1st or 2nd, however you're counting. Then that's like a week and a half left in this month. If they want to come to a meeting of ours, it can't be a health committee meeting because that's already happened. They were eyeing the business affairs committee, but as I told the health department, it seems rather unfair of them to sort of spring this on us now and expect us to sort of turn over everything to try and fit them in.
Mhm.
So
And what would they be presenting at the committee?
it's unclear, I guess,
Okay.
just that they're closing, and this is my understanding,
Okay.
because we've never had anything like this.
Yeah.
What I asked the health department is this true? Do they have to do this? Do we have to be the venue for that?
Right.
And they're gonna get back to me.
Okay.
If we're not, if we don't have to be, then that may solve the issue, in which case they'll do it on their own or something, or do something else, they'll find some other venues. If we do have to be, then we need to find a meeting to put them on. Now, I also asked the health department, is there any wiggle room with the date? They just told us this, so it's not our fault that they waited this long to get this process started. We should have to drop everything and necessarily accommodate this. And it just seems.
They want like a resolution of support. I'm just
That's
confused
not
as to
clear.
what
That's not clear.
like what they need to
all is
present.
clear is that they want to come and present at a meeting that they're closed, and to say to the community that they're closing. It's unclear whether they need it to be an official public hearing. It's unclear whether they want a resolution. I don't think that's the case, but it's not clear.
Can we just use that call as notification? Like,
They say a public meeting. So again, there are a lot of unknowns, but in case it comes back that, yes, we need to be the venue for this kind of thing, which I highly doubt, because this is a state law. And there are many municipalities in the state that don't have community boards, in which case, if a facility like that closes in one of those municipalities, what do? When they
but I'm confused that there would be a clause that you have to announce publicly that you're closing.
But
Like-
there's, that's why I've called the health department. and they get back to me. But
We've raised it now.
if it
so-
does, if it does come back that we need to accommodate them somehow. If we have wiggle room, then would like the health committee be willing to meet in October to hear this thing?
And to talk about logistics. Yeah, what if they all went to a bar?
Well, the health committee on Saturday, so. But so.
Want
I
to go for
guess
dinner, Elvie?
it's- So,
I'm sorry.
already made an announcement. to
But I
members
think
that we're
Mark actually has his hand raised up. Can we call him, Mark?
all right.
Yeah, this is actually, they do have to come to a public meeting. In our case, it's always the community board. It's the same thing as when they were opening up a methadone clinic or moving one in, et cetera. They didn't have to get a resolution. They just had to come to a meeting and say it, basically.
Yes,
Does this count what we did right now?
but they didn't come to this meeting.
But that. but
No,
we
it
said
has to be-
it.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They had come to, what was it, a land use meeting? I can't remember. It was when there was a
Yeah.
methadone clinic by 42nd Street, that whole thing.
So,
It's just
think-
notification. That's all it is. Just come and say, hey, we're closing.
When they have a
We
significant
can't do
change in
finance and
operations, they
land
have to do
use?
that.
Next week?
Well, I'm just,
You
why didn't
could.
they come to this meeting then?
That's,
Uh,
they should come to us. They could come to exec.
They called
actually-
today?
No, they called yesterday,
Okay.
and I didn't have time to get to it.
Yeah, no problem.
No
today.
notice. Yeah, they have to get public notice.
They actually said they might want to come to business affairs and licensing, given that I guess. I mean, they're a dialysis center, but I guess they're sort of a business.
Well, I mean, at this point, that's immaterial what the committee is, so whatever committee they want to show up, they can stay for new and old business and just announce that they're closing.
Okay.
It's just
Should I-
simple.
Put it, it's got to
should-
be noticed. You have to
Yeah,
put
it's gotta
it-
be on, it's gotta be on the agenda, so just figure out when they can make it.
So just
and
put it,
stick
yeah,
on.
Claire, is that okay? Can we just make it the first item?
That's
And
fine.
just give them 5 minutes?
Not even that. They just need to come in and say that. They don't actually even need to have any comments. They
Okay,
just need to notify us, the community, and that's it, and walk
okay,
away.
so
We've
let's
always
just put
been
it,
polite and let them talk.
It's a change of operation.
yeah, so just put it under business affairs,
Okay,
affairs,
all
yeah.
right, we'll do that.
Give them 1 minute.
Mark, that, so when
So
the state health department is still gonna get back to me, but I
Yeah,
also
good.
put in, an additional question after I spoke with them. Does that mean that Mount Sinai has to come before us and announce? that they're
Oh,
closing?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
They have to have a,
I
yeah,
mean,
plan.
They have the means to have their own.
So what's supposed to be happening is they're supposed to be announcing the plan and for the continuity of service to their current patient body, right? So they're supposed to say, well, this is where we're gonna
You're gonna
provide
go.
service or we're gonna refer, so that we and others are aware.
Because they need state approval to close.
Yes,
Yeah.
right?
well, yes, any
Yeah.
significant change in operation, they need to notify the public.
So
but
let's see.
it's considered a closure officially.
But as you say,
Well, right, because the patients who were going there, they need to help find alternative
Right.
venues.
as you say, Mount Sinai doesn't need to hold that public meeting in our room. They can have it anywhere if they want to.
Okay,
It's a closure, it still requires all the similar guidelines, doesn't it?
Yeah, but to Jesus's point, it's not like it has to be, so we're like the local body that holds public meetings, so I think that's why they're coming to us. It's not a mandate that they go to a community board because they
Okay.
don't exist across the state.
Yeah.
That's not DOH's requirement.
so what you're saying is this facility, if they had a meeting space, they could call their own meeting, a public meeting and invite people and publicize it.
They really should show up to a community board meeting.
Okay.
As it's
Yeah,
normal.
I mean, I actually don't mind that, but it's just annoying that they called so late, so.
Yeah, as long as just make sure
Yeah.
it's calendar.
Because then that would have been LB's
Yeah.
committee last week. So,
But like Mount Sinai is the bigger fish and the bigger fish don't meeting, and it's the smaller fish.
I mean, they can show up at full board if they want, so. All right,
Okay, sorry about that.
no problem. Okay, so
But it
now,
should be a present, like Mount for Mount Sinai, it should be a presentation, not just, hey, we're closing.
Yeah,
Any
yeah.
questions?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Just-
We
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, anytime you can get Mount Sinai to talk, like, yeah, make them sing. All right, public safety.
All right, so you haven't met since May, I believe. It's been a bit of a long layoff there. In that timeframe, we've also changed up the committee roster quite a bit, so when everybody gets back together in October, we'll probably try to invite the new precinct commanders for introductions and just kind of acquaint them, get the new committee members acquainted, and see what other issues pop up from there. I still need a response on the year-long agenda, just working through that. So I'm a vice chair either, so I'm not sure what the,
We'll talk about that.
yeah, we can talk a lot about that. So as it stands now, the only other
Now you
thing,
have a full committee.
yeah, well, the only other thing that's come up over the summer, and there's been a lot of emails on this bike safety thing, which in my opinion would fall under transportation more so than public safety, but if you could make an argument, it could go into either committee.
Whatever collaboration.
So I
Yeah,
don't
you
know
wanna figure out.
if this committee feels that public safety should take up the matter. I mean, I know transportation already passed a resolution that chimes in on some of the matter. But we've still been getting a lot of community feedback, especially with the incident that occurred on Friday in our district.
Mhm.
And a similar incident down in Chinatown as well. So
What was the Friday incident?
it's under investigation, so there's not much I can say publicly, but basically a city biker hit and injured somebody, 38th and 2nd. may or may not have been going the wrong way. So it's more of an enforcement issue that individual is still in critical condition in the hospital.
Yeah, there's press coverage of that.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I had seen the other one further downtown.
yeah,
So we have gotten a couple of emails about that issue over the summer, but the only, because it already is against the law.
Right.
To go the wrong way, so we talked about this a little bit, so like, there's not much more that we can ask for, except to be like, yeah, let's have a traffic officer on every block.
and
you know?
that's been my conversation.
Yeah.
Point back to them, it's already, the laws are
Enforcement,
already.
Yeah, it's enforcement.
Yeah,
so,
I've explained that to anybody who's given me feedback, is that
Yeah.
like, I just put it in a more simple way, like I said, if the current legal framework for it is appropriate. And if the law already supports the enforcement, and it's more of a service request thing to give it attention to the right agencies so that they can help this problem. And it includes DOT, because we're trying to stay out of the business of micromanaging DOT's safety and design issues. But we can pass stuff along to them in terms of constituent complaints and see if they respond to it with a proposal to change something. We just like, it is a very big city, and a lot of this still strikes me as anecdotal, and even with the e-bike safety stuff, it just seems like that there was a lot of this stuff where it was like, oh yeah, that does seem like a problem. And we review the situation, and it turns out that literally every single one of these things is sold with instructions to charge them under supervision, and that all the circumstances in which
Yeah.
they use.
I think some of these issues too, because like,
Yeah,
I
it
bike
just-
on that same bike lane,
Yeah.
and I do see a lot of people going the wrong way. And that's, so maybe, I mean, talk offline and see if it's something of, like, maybe something on major corridors, like, I always see it on 30, like, I almost got hit by someone going the other way on 35th.
Yeah.
Here. So maybe it could be something small like that,
Cyclists
yeah.
too. You would have advocacy.
I'm saying
groups
that as
that
cyclists, yeah.
Cycling
I'm
should
saying
be
that as a-
restricted. We do need, I think that needs to be, we could always remind NYPD.
Yeah.
that
This could be something that brings the cyclists and walkers
Yeah,
together.
I'm sure if the precinct commanders do actually attend, then
Yeah.
that'll be some of the discussion, but I know there's some advocacy groups that are looking to get more in the way of licensing,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's more just, I mean, at this point, it's just enforcement,
Yeah.
but
It
maybe
is
the
for-
compromise is
for
like have someone at
budget.
34, 23rd, 14.
Is this-
so on and so on.
So where does this fall? Is it transportation, public safety?
I think you go under either. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll talk offline with you too. and
Yeah, I think
what's
if there's
best
not
direction.
gonna be a business discussion that comes to a resolution, you guys can just casually talk about it. And even still, like, for a lot of this stuff, we can talk at the next exec, but I'm more than willing to delegate it. Just because, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, it could be as simple as just being like, we would request a traffic cop on 14, 20,
Yeah.
just something simple that,
Yeah, I mean, the
Makes
numbers
the
are up,
request,
the
yeah.
numbers, the enforcement numbers are up. But I mean, I don't know if it makes sense to, throw it into the budget, conversations.
It already is there, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there's stuff in district
there's
needs
some
asked every
language in
year.
There's not much, from, like, if we're talking about enforcement, the traffic officers don't normally ticket bicyclists, right? So it
It's,
would have to
it's
be
the precinct's
regular
traffic safety
uniform instruction,
or
yeah.
the overall, or the citywide traffic,
Yeah.
that would issue that, and there's.
And they have to run after the bicyclists.
yeah, it's not practical.
Yeah, and that's the.
The increased enforcement is usually from spot checks, but those are optimally located to find the most
Speed bumps.
violations.
I've seen, like,
And they
where
end up doing something
have some
ironic,
officer
where
run in
most
and have
violations
some
happen
stop
in places where
Yeah.
cyclists actually have to do with safety conflicts. So it means that they're going through like T intersections.
Right.
Where there isn't any cross traffic, and they don't go to the hotspots in the neighborhood the hotspots would be where it'd be the hardest to
Okay.
pursue.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just bring it up as a topic,
Yeah.
one of the many, and see.
Yeah, we'll
Take the
see.
temperature,
Yeah,
you know.
I don't know what else we
Yeah.
can possibly do unless
No, I
there's a
agree.
specific advocacy item that we want to.
Did the new captain of the 17th introduce officers on bicycle?
Yeah, so that is one, but it's 4 officers. I mean, I don't want to meet its expectations.
Because then again, the other thing is like what Sandy was saying is like, if you're gonna ticket one of these people, it's like, you're gonna have a bike chase down. It's like,
No, yeah, I
ticket
just
someone.
don't know, because she comes from Brooklyn. she
Well, they
can't
actually
have
stage
practice
people
over
like
there.
Yeah.
at one place and then a second place where they can observe and then.
Yeah,
flag
but
it
it's
down.
still,
That's exactly
yeah.
how they operate. I don't want to say too much publicly,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
one
yeah.
radios to the,
Yep.
to the next, and then they'll stop them, and then the other officer observes and writes the
You don't
sign.
have to chase them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, but that requires like.
I
5.
saw this video of the scooters. And they actually blockaded it and they just went straight through. Like, it was, and then they had to run after that. It was a mess.
I mean, typically they say, you solve it through design. And I think it'd be great if public safety could think outside of just having enforcement, like that's not
Yeah,
gonna be the
I mean,
solution.
enforcement is not a practical
Mhm.
solution.
Yeah, it's not
on a
practical,
large
so-
scale, so yeah, I don't know, I mean, there's some other things we can look at. for-
Yeah, bring it up to the
Some of
committee.
this within the e-bike resolution in June.
Yeah,
We.
well, that's what I
we
literally
talked about
cited that to
Yeah.
people, yeah. All right, so we'll talk about this and then also just bring it up to your committee and see what other alternatives are. Land use.
Okay, Majette is going to lead the meeting. I can't make it. And this is George James is going to give a presentation on the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity Text Amendment. And then we're going to talk about privately owned public spaces, as we mentioned at full board. It's a big issue. I know there was a report done, Letty did it, I think in 2019, and we had a lot of documentation. Is that somewhere that we can access it for the meeting?
I can give it to you. I believe I gave it to the chair of the Parks Committee, who's curious about it. Yes, we can give it to you, if you want it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not a one meeting kind of thing. It's definitely a larger discussion. And then our committee priorities and then budget requests. And October meeting, we haven't dealt with yet. One thing in November, the ESCR coming back and they said they do a presentation on the pinch point. That they've got it to a point where there's design
Oh,
good,
completed.
very nice.
One other thing in 2025, the EDC is going to stop giving Solar One money for parking under the FDR, which was the whole reason why we couldn't get rid of the parking. So I think that's something to keep on the radar.
Mhm.
Absolutely. The other thing is September 29th, we have to submit our proposal for the planning fellow. And Michelle and I have been talking about it. We have two ideas. One is to look at coastal resiliency and flood risk. This is taken straight out of our budget requests. So looking for how we can use their expertise to come up with some ideas for how to address that. And then I think opportunities for POPs and how to use them. So we'll submit for two different
Mhm.
proposals. And definitely those two fit right in with our budget requests.
And I was actually thinking, do you think the public safety bike stuff could be an issue for fellow? Or is that too
Probably,
narrow?
it's probably a little, yeah.
Yeah, but I would encourage anyone else. We do have 9 days and it's a little
I-
short, but.
I reached out to a couple of people, but haven't heard back. And I'm just assuming there's.
Yeah. So, I mean, another opportunity to have like an extra resource on the committee on any type of issue that you need a planning fellow on, so.
And some of the other community boards have used them for a lot of different things. It's not just land use. It's business, empty storefronts, lots of different things, so. Yeah, it's a bit tight this year, but it's every year.
Yeah. All right, any further questions for land use? All right, seeing none, thank you, Susan. Yeah, he's
Just
just,
confirm, George James, I swear.
Yeah, and it's 40 bioswales.
40, yeah.
40, between, we have to share with CB3, and they're very aggressive.
Okay, let's move on to youth and education, John.
Yeah, hi. I can't see the agenda. We don't have a September meeting. The October meeting will be a discussion of the two priorities of the committee for the year. Priority one being the issue of, so why don't I then, to save time here tonight, simply give the October agenda to the office so that I don't need to, Jesus doesn't have to type as I speak. And just note that the September meeting has been canceled. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring it up in next month's exec, but do you want to just say very briefly what those 2 points are? Because we
Well,
already
the
heard.
two priorities I mentioned briefly last week were, one, the migrant, the kids of asylum seeking migrants. It's a huge issue in schools. In fact, as soon as this meeting ends, I'm going over to a CEC meeting where it will be discussed, and we will have at our meeting someone from the DOE to talk about it, as well as people from one or two local schools to talk about the impact on the schools. It's very difficult to get information on attendance in September under normal circumstances because the school rosters aren't finalized until October. And then the other issue is a broader issue raised by a committee member of mental health care for kids in schools, and getting to the issue of guidance counselors and social workers. And we'll be working on that issue with Elvie and her committee. And Elvie is a bit of an expert on this herself, teaching and writing on it. So we look forward to her input. And Rich has very kindly agreed to have the housing committee be part of this. This will be a big issue across the city and is an increasingly large issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Any questions in person or online? All right, seeing none, we'll end with business affairs.
Hello. I don't see the agenda up either, but I don't think we really have anything on it. Jesus and I talked, and it seems like there is a new applicant in our district. So I think just to be like aware of timelines, it's unclear like what their timelines are, but I think that we should probably bring them in for September.
B, you have a question?
Yes, my question is about the asylums. We're dealing with the housing issue with our committee, and we're dealing also with education. But I thought under business, or it could be part of the others, the whole question of the right to work and what they need to do to work is very significant. My position is it can be speeded up so we're not in the condition that it is. So I didn't know if it might be something good for business to talk about, because the employers are asking, and yet we can't move DHS or the state to go further. So I just raised that as a question.
Yeah. So Claire and I have been talking about that offline, so that is definitely something we can add to that agenda.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and happy to collaborate with other committees on that, but that, yeah, is a great suggestion.
Should we try and do a reso? Like, should we get an elected official to come to make it, rather than just a discussion? Like someone who,
So, yeah, as a piece of legislation.
Yeah.
So we can, yeah, we'll add it to next week's agenda, because there's also another item that I want to talk to you about as well. But let's add that, Jesus. Resolution in support of right to work for migrants. And I'll work on finding the appropriate legislator for that. I'll do that.
Well, given that 3 days in advance, I mean, will that be done, or
We'll get it done. I'll work with Claire.
it might be a beefy agenda? Claire, we also got another cannabis applicant today. So essentially, because the Cannabis Control Board passed sort of more permanent guidelines for their sort of normal cannabis program, that seems to do away with the concerns of the individuals who sued and, you know, caused an injunction and stuff like that. So we have gotten today our first applicant for like a normal cannabis license, not the sort of provisional ones that were being issued before. Like the one that the board heard several months ago, that was one of those provisional ones. and the one that we discussed the other day, that's also one of those provisions.
Mm,
A was the first one of like the proper program that we've gotten, so we may have two on the agenda, but I'll send you an email about all that stuff tomorrow.
okay.
So that we
That sounds good. Thank you, Jesus. So we'll see. But hopefully we can also talk about the asylum workers and, this is all coming. I didn't mention this, but I think I did at full board. We didn't meet over the summer. So we weren't able to discuss any type of questionnaire similar to what we ask applicants who are applying for liquor licenses. But I have been thinking about it over the summer, and I'll have a draft and hopefully circulate it to the committee before the meeting. But, I'm thinking very simple questions that like you can't, that aren't like Googleable, so I think there's a lot of extra questions on the liquor license questionnaire that I'm not going to include on the cannabis one, but that's another thing that maybe should be a full agenda item.
And then one other item, not necessarily for September's meeting, but for this year, and we'll talk about it, is I got a call. I had several conversations, a lot of the state legislators about the work that we've done on sex work. So the decriminalization of that will be on the list as well to discuss. So yeah,
That sounds good.
yeah.
But that is all from me.
Any questions for business affairs? All right, Jesus, you're all set? With business affairs, all right. So we're now at old or new business. If any member has any old or new business, please raise your hand.
Yeah, the new business question for Jesus. For reserving for committee meetings, public members, for them to join on Zoom, how many days in advance do you put that up? Like, when do you put the link up? Is it 5 days before, a week before, 10 days before? I've had a few people from the community, they've reached out to me and they wanted to know if they could still join via Zoom. I explained to them, yes, but we're now in person. But they said the link was not up yet for Parks. I'm just wondering usually what the timeline is.
when you say public members, you mean members of the public?
Yes.
Okay, so for members of the public, we try to put that up at least a week in advance. Schedules have been a little bit weird lately, but as for the committee meetings, it should be fairly easy to put them up at least a week in advance.
Okay.
For all of those committees that we mentioned today, that the agendas are ready to post, within a few days, we're going to post those. So, for the meetings that are coming up early in October, we try to prioritize those, but yeah.
And as a reminder, that's always associated with a finalized agenda. So the sooner you send in a complete agenda, the faster they can put up the link.
So yeah, we'll be working on putting those out. I'm not sure that I can say, a week in advance or 5 days in advance. We try not to cut it too close, but if people look at the calendar page, it will always go there first.
This is 14 days in advance. They're ready. They're excited about their meeting.
Good. Yeah, if the agenda, when it gets to exec, if it is, done and well worded and finalized, the next day I tell the staff liaisons, okay, your agenda is ready to post, get going. So if there are things, sometimes with agendas, there are things that, okay, it's not ready, we need to add this, we need to take away this, then we won't post it, it might cut it close. But for cut and dry things, we can put it up with good time.
Okay.
Because we want to have a good, we wanted people to make use of the hybrid option. It really is the most convenient, and given that we're limited in space, it's the best option.
Okay. So seeing no further old or new business, if there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. All right, seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
So the closed comments.
Yeah, so there's a couple that we keep seeing.
Yeah.
The one